Luther's Small Catechism with Explanation. The Black and Maroon edition, copyright 2017, from Concordia Publishing House. The Fifth Commandment. You shall not murder. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not hurt or harm our neighbor in his body, but help and support him in every physical need.
Question 62, Part B of the Fifth Commandment. B. It forbids killing oneself, suicide, seeking help in killing oneself, assisting a person in taking his or her own life, assisted suicide, or killing a person who has to die or whose life is deemed as too burdensome, euthanasia. 170, Psalm 31, verses 14 through 15. But I trust in you, O Lord, I say, you are my God, my times are in your hand. Note, when someone is near death, certain treatments may only prolong suffering and not enable either recovery or physical well-being. In such cases, it is important to note that allowing death to occur when someone is irreversibly dying is different from causing death, which is forbidden by God. What does this mean? Suicide, killing people, euthanasia, all having to do with murder, all having to do with killing, all having to do with the Fifth Commandment. Now, suicide oftentimes is thought of as, well, that's kind of a no-brainer, but there's a problem in our world today, especially in American Christianity or American regular world, if you would, out in schools, is that when people are suffering greatly, we think, one, it is their right to kill themselves. And that's not true under God. It's not their right. God has their times and their death and their life in his hands. It's his. We're just stewards of what has been given to us. So that's the first thing. The other is that we think we're doing them a favor by ending their suffering. And the difficulty with that is that God teaches us things through suffering. He helped his own son learn what obedience was through suffering on the cross, even death on the cross. So that's an important thing. He teaches things through suffering. That sin and death and our mortality and our life ebbing away, that is not what God ever wanted for us to begin with. Sin brought that about, and that pushes us toward a Savior. And so those are the conversations to talk with people about, is to say, one, your life has meaning, and you should never want to have suicide. In our world, many times in public schools, people will say, well, you should help me commit suicide because my life is terrible. And our world kind of pushes to, well, let me help you. Let me find comfort in death. Let me do this. And we're like, no, your life has meaning. And in fact, as a Christian, you can give great hope to people when they call to you or when they talk to you about, oh, my life is worthless. You say, no, it's not. It's worth a lot to God. And in fact, your suffering is actually helping me to serve you. That's the same way with euthanasia. Oftentimes they think, well, you're not useful anymore, or you're costing too much money, so we're just going to pull the plug on your life, and that'll all be better for everybody. And I say, no, this is about God being in control of life and how we can serve them. And to look at what is God's will according to this, not only about their life, but how we serve one another in life and in tragedy and in pain and suffering, and even when someone dies according to God's plan and according to what he says. So that's very important to notice these things, that you go by what God says. And sometimes this is difficult when you get to end-of-life situations, and I have a kind of rule of thumb. And the question is this: when you go to the hospital, when you go to the doctor, and they say, hey, I would recommend you do this, whatever it is, pill, treatment, removing something, whatever, and you say, will this cause the death of the person? So like, if I unplug them or give them this pill, are they going to die within the next few minutes because I did this? And they will be able to tell you. They'll say, yeah, this will. They're going to die right away, and it's because of this. And then you go, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to kill them. They might say, well, I'm going to unplug them from the ventilator. They're going to breathe on their own, but most likely they will die after maybe a day or a few hours or something because their body just can't take it anymore. And you're like, oh, I'm not causing the death. I'm allowing the death to happen because we've kind of stopped it in a certain way because of our medical treatments. And so sometimes there's some grayness in this, but my rule of thumb usually works, and to ask those questions right up front. And then when they say honestly, like, oh yes, if Grandpa takes this pill on hospice and he'll just drift off to sleep and die, then you're causing that to Grandpa, as opposed to, well, we're going to stop this because it's causing so much pain for him, and in a few hours, or a few days, or even a few weeks, death will probably come because his body's shutting down. That's a different situation. Death is happening. We're forestalling it as opposed to causing it.
The Lord bless your day as well as your week.